Hey everybody, BigBlackHatMan here, and this week I'm going to do a completely serious episode. That's right, no jokes. It's a completely serious tribute. Wait. It's a tribute, but what's it a tribute to? And, oh boy. I don't seem to, I've left my notes somewhere. Oh, well, here they are, Hold on. Here we are. And this week, we're doing a completely serious, with no jokes involved tribute to humorist Mark Twain. Wait. So today, we're talking about Mark Twain. Now, there's a couple very simple reasons for this. One of the first and foremost is he's had a huge influence on me personally. I've been reading his work clear back since I was a little black hat man, back in grade school. I was in the 4th grade the first time I picked up some of Twain's works. Now, the other reason is very simple. He was one of the leading writers of the late 19th century. His real name, Samuel Clemens, he went west in the late 19th century and is often considered the very first Western writer. Born in 1835, he had the market cornered at the time since no one else was really talking about it. Of course, James Fenimore Cooper might take issue since he wrote about what was the American West when he was alive 50 years earlier or so, but we're nitpicking now. Mark Twain's book Roughing It came out in the 1860s, of course being the very first book about what we consider the American West today, since, well, quite frankly, nobody else had really even thought about it too much at the time. Now, I'm sure you could cite other minor works that came before his, but his is the most significant. And so today, I'm going to read you a little portion of that book and try and expose you to the wit and wisdom of Mark Twain. I hope you enjoy this dramatic reading. I'm going to do a cutaway now. There's really no reason for it, except for I got to go up and get the book. So, cutaway. Ahem. From Mark Twain's Roughing It, the 20th chapter of the book, a selected reading. On my, I don't have a hard copy, this is the e-reader, sorry. Ahem. Wait, I don't wear glasses. They're not reading glasses, they're 3D glasses. No need those. Ahem, once again. This part of the story takes place as they are traveling west towards Nevada, he and his brother. The reading begins. This reminds me of a circumstance just after we left Julesburg on the Platte. I was sitting with the driver and he said, "I can tell you a most laughable thing indeed, if you would like to listen to it. Horace Greeley went over this road once. When he was leaving Carson City, he told the driver, Hank Monk, that he had an engagement to lecture at Placerville, and was very anxious to go there quick. Hank Monk cracked his whip and started off at an awful pace. The coach bounced up and down in such a terrific way that it jolted the buttons all off of Horace's coat, and finally shot his head clean through the roof of the stage. And then he yelled at Hank Monk and begged him to go easier. Said he weren't as much as hurry as he was a while ago. But Hank Monk said, 'Keep your seat, Horace, and I'll get you there on time.' And you bet he did too. What was left of him. A day or two after we had picked up a Denver man at the crossroads, and he told us a good deal about the country and the Gregory diggings. He seemed a very entertaining person, and a man well posted in the affairs of Colorado. By and by, he remarked, 'I can tell you a most laughable thing indeed. If you would like to listen to it, Horace Greeley went over this road once when he was leaving Carson City. He told the driver Hank Monk that he had an engagement to lecture at Placerville, and was very anxious to go through quick. Hank Monk cracked his whip and started off at an awful pace. The coach bounced up and down in such a terrific way that it jolted the buttons all off of Horace's coat, and finally shot his head clean through the roof of the stage. And then he yelled at Hank Monk and begged him to go easier. Said he weren't in as much a hurry as he was a while ago. And Hank Monk said, 'Keep your seat, Horace, and I'll get you there on time.' And you bet he did too. What was left of him. At Fort Bridger, some days after this, we took on board a cavalry sergeant. A very popular and soldierly person indeed. From no other man during the whole journey did we gather such a store of conscious and well-arranged military information. It was surprising to find, in the desolate wilds of our country, a man so thoroughly acquainted with everything useful to know in this line of life, and yet of such an inferior rank and unpretentious bearing. For as much as 3 hours we listened with unabated interest. Finally, he got upon the subject of transcontinental travel, and presently said, "I can tell you a very laughable thing indeed, if you would like to listen to it. Horace Greeley went over this road once. When he was leaving Carson City, he told the driver, Hank Monk, they had an engagement to lecture at Placerville, and was very anxious to go through quick. Hank Monk cracked his whip and started off at an awful pace. The coach bounced up and down in such a terrific way that it jolted the buttons all off of Horace's coat, and finally shot his head clean through the roof of the stage. And then he yelled at Hank Monk and begged him to go easier, said he weren't in as much a hurry as he was a while ago. But Hank Monk said, 'Keep your seat, Horace, and I'll get you there on time.' And you bet he did, too. What was left of him. When we were 8 hours out from Salt Lake City, a Mormon preacher got in with us on a way station, a gentle, soft-spoken, kindly man, and one whom any stranger would warm to at first sight. I can never forget the pathos that was in his voice as he told, in simple language, the story of his people's wanderings and unpitied sufferings. No pulpit eloquence was ever so moving and so beautiful as his outcast picture of the first Mormon pilgrimage across the plains, struggling sorrowfully onward to the land of its banishment, and marking its desolate way with graves and watering it with tears. His words so wrought upon us that it was a relief to all of us when the conversation drifted into a more cheerful channel, and the natural features of the curious country we were in came under treatment. One matter after another was pleasantly discussed, and at length the stranger said, 'I can tell you a most laughable thing indeed, if you would like to listen. Horace Greeley went out over this road once. When he was leaving Carson City, he told the driver, Hank Monk, that he had an engagement to lecture in Placerville, and was very anxious to go there quick. Hank Monk cracked his whip and started off at an awful pace. The coach bounced up and down in such a terrific way that it jolted the buttons all off of Horace's coat, and finally shot his head clean through the roof of the stage. And then he yelled at Hank Monk and begged him to go easier, and he weren't in as much a hurry as he was a while ago, but Hank Monk said, 'Keep your seat, Horace, and I'll get you there on time.' And you bet he did, too. What was left of him. 10 miles out of Ragtown, we found a poor wanderer who had laid down to die. He had walked as long as he could, but his limbs had failed him at last. Hunger and fatigue had conquered him. It would have been inhumane to leave him there. We paid his fare to Carson and lifted him into the coach. It was some little time before he showed any decided signs of life, but by dint of chafing him and pouring brandy between his lips, we finally brought him to a languid consciousness. Then he fed him a little, and by he seemed to comprehend the situation, and a grateful light softened his eye. We made his mail sack bed as comfortable as possible, and constructed a pillow of him with our coats. He seemed very thankful. Then he looked up in our faces and said in a feeble voice that had a tremble of honest emotion in it, 'Gentlemen, I know not who you are, but you have saved my life, and although I can never be able to repay you for it, I feel that I can at least make 1 hour of your journey lighter. I take it you are strangers to this great thoroughfare, but I am entirely familiar with it. In this connection, I can tell you a most laughable thing indeed, if you would like to listen. Horace Greeley,' I said impressively, 'suffering stranger, proceed at your peril. You see in me the melancholy wreck of a once stalwart and magnificent manhood. What has brought me to this? That thing which you are about to tell. Gradually but surely that tiresome old anecdote has sapped my strength, undermined my constitution, withered my life. Pity my helplessness. Spare me only just this once, and tell me about young George Washington and his little hatchet for a change.' We were saved, but not so the invalid. In trying to retain the anecdote, in his system he strained himself and died in our arms. I am aware now that I ought not to have asked the sturdiest citizen of all that region what I asked on the mere shadow of a man. After 7 years' residence on the Pacific coast, I know that no passenger or driver on the Overland ever corked that anecdote in, when a stranger was by and survived. Within a period of 6 years, I crossed and recrossed the Sierras between Nevada and California 13 times by stage, and listened to that deathless incident 481 or 82 times. I had the list somewhere. Drivers always told it, conductors always told it, landlords told it, chance passengers told it, the very Chinamen and vagrant Indians recounted it. I have had the same driver tell it to me 2 or 3 times in the same afternoon. It has come to me in all the multitude of tongues, the babble bequeathed to earth, and flavored with whiskey, brandy, beer, cologne, sozodant, tobacco, garlic, onions, grasshoppers, everything that has a fragrance to it, through all the long list of things that are gorged or guzzled by the sons of men. I never have smelt any anecdote as often as I have smelt that one. Never have smelt any anecdote that smelt so variegated as that one, and you never could learn to know it by the smell, because every time you thought you had learned the smell of it, it would turn up with a different smell. Bayard Taylor was written about this hoary anecdote. Richardson has published it, so have Jones, Smith, Johnson, Ross Brown, and every other correspondence indicting between that ever set his foot upon the great overland road anywhere between Julesburg and San Francisco. And I have heard that it is in the Talmud. I have seen it in print in 9 different foreign languages. I have been told that it is employed in the Inquisition in Rome, and I now learn, with regret, that it is going to be set to music. I do not think that such things are right. Stagecoaching on the overland is no more, and stage drivers are a defunct race. I wonder if they bequeath that bald-headed anecdote to their successors, the railroad brakemen and conductors, and if these latter still persecute the helpless passengers with it until he concludes, as did many a tourist of other days, that the real grandeurs of the Pacific are not Yosemite and the big trees, but Hank Monk and his adventure with Horace Greeley. And what makes the Warren anecdote the most aggravating is that the adventure it celebrates never occurred. If it were a great anecdote, that seeming to merit would be a chiefest virtue, for creative power belongs to greatness. But what ought to be done to a man who would wantonly contrive so flat a one as this? If I were to suggest what ought to be done to him, I should be called extravagant. But what does the 16th chapter of Daniel say? Ah, ha! I hope you enjoyed that. What? Is the dramatic reading over? I'm sorry. I read that part before I was bored. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this little tribute to Mark Twain, and I'm going to leave you with a thought. A thought I'm going to read to you, because I haven't read to you enough. Mark Twain had a lot to say about critics and opposition, but here's one of my favorites. A man who was good with the one-liner, a short one for you. I don't mind what the opposition say of me, so long as they don't tell the truth about me, but when they descend to telling the truth about me, I consider that as taking an unfair advantage. Maybe it's an unfair advantage to tell the truth about me as well. Who knows? So I hope you enjoyed this, ladies and gentlemen. Happy trails. Go read some Mark Twain. And watch out for those rough patches. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the American humorist. I mean, he was the leading century of the late... He was the leading century? I know, I'm just screwing up for fun of it.